Keith, we're about to start the meeting. I think we have about 30 seconds. Just give you a moment to get settled in. Good to go? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much for coming today. We'll open this meeting of the Fort Order Reuse Authority, November 13th, Friday. We'll have a called order. And Michelle, would you please lead us? Rochelle, I apologize. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before I forget, on behalf of myself, the FORA board, and the staff, I want to wish everyone here a fantastic Thanksgiving at the end of this month. I hope you enjoy every moment you have with your family. And to the staff, I want to thank you for everything as well and wish you a fantastic Thanksgiving. Let us proceed with going to closed session. We'll be going to closed session on two items: conference with legal counsel, potential litigation relating Government Code Section 54956.9E2, FORA Marina Coast Water District dispute resolution, and 3B, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9E2, FORA prevailing wage issues and exposure. And I want to let you know, as to item 8C, which is the Fort Order Reuse Authority Prevailing Wage Program, which is for information and action, we're going to continue that to December due to numerous questions and concerns that have been brought forth that Authority Council feels it's appropriate to put it over to December. But when we get to that item on the agenda, if you are here for it, we will allow, of course, people to make comments on this, but there'll be no action taken on that today. So is there anyone in the public has any questions or comments relating to the two closed session items?
We have a comment.
On the two closed session items, please come up here and to the microphone is located over here. Is this?
This is 8C.
No, that'll be later today in the meeting.
We can still comment on it?
At 8C, yes, when we get there, yes. And if I forget, jump up and throw something at me and I'll remember. Okay. Seeing no comments for closed session, we will go into it and we will be back as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Oh, really?
Thank you. If you please be seated, we're back in open session. We went to closed session for a very short period of time, much shorter than I thought. And we now have, please, a report out of closed session.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. The board met in closed session on items 3A and B, and there's nothing to report out.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Let's start off with the voting board members. City of Carmel, Mayor Pro Tem Beach. City Del Rey Oaks. Mayor Edelin, thank you. City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell, you are here.
I am.
City of Monterey, Vice Mayor Hoffa. Monterey County Supervisor Potter. Supervisor Phillips. Supervisor Parker. Councilmember Lucius. City of Salinas Mayor Gunter. City of San City Mayor Pendergrass. City of Sisa Mayor Rubio. And Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. Ex officios, beginning with the 20th Congressional District, Rochelle Dornat. Here. 17th State Senate District, Nicole Charles. 29th State Assembly District, Erica Parker. University of California, Santa Cruz, Donna Blitzer. California State University, Monterey Bay, Dr. Eduardo Ochoa. Thank you. Monterey Peninsula, Vicky Nakamura. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, PK Diffenbaugh. Monterey Salinas Transit, Lisa Reinheimer. Got it right? Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale. Todd Buck or Hank Myers? I'm sorry, I'm just remiss. I need to go back and also mention City of Marina, Councilmember Morton. My apologies about that. I'm going way too fast. United States Army, Colonel Fellinger, or Hugh, okay. Fort Ord Brack office, Bill Collins, or Lyle Shurtleff? No, okay. Marina Coast Water District, Director Lay or Director Gustafson? Director Lay, thank you. Okay. I did say MPC. So Walter Tribbley, thank you. Vicky is not here. Thank you. My apologies, Dr. Tribbley. Chair O'Connell, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Going to number 6, acknowledgements, announcements, and correspondence. Michael?
Yes, Chair O'Connell, just a couple of comments. First, just for everyone's edification, the comment phone has been moved to this section over here. Members of the public, if you want, this is the location where the comments will be heard. Second, I wanted to announce that we have added a staff member to replace Jim Arnold. As most of the board members know, Mr. Arnold passed away about a year ago. We've had some interim help, including this particular person helped us on an interim basis. It's Peter Said. Peter, where are you? So, Jonathan, he works for you. And he will be here shortly. Chair, that's all. I also want to acknowledge that we have the senior staff and chief of staff for Congressman Farr joining us today.
Thank you. Going to the consent agenda, there are 4 items listed there, but the 4th item, 7D, we're going to pull that for a discussion and a little presentation. So as to consent items 7A, they approved the October 9 minutes, 7B, the base reuse plan reassessment report, and C, the ad hoc committee policy regarding. Is there anyone on the board who has any questions or desires to pull any one of those 3 items?
Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
a correction to the minutes. I don't need to necessarily pull it. If I can just say that under business item 7A, there were a whole series of motions, and the roll call take on motion number 2 doesn't list my vote. I think I was still here and I probably voted. So, and I think I probably voted no, in case that helps.
Thank you. Any other comments or changes? Anyone in the public have any comments or desire to pull any one of those items? 7B, is it? Do you desire to pull that or just have a comment on it? Yes, okay. So 7B has been pulled and 7D, close public comment, bring it back, have a motion to approve consent items 7A and 7C as modified by Board Member Parker. Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Rubio and seconded by Mayor Edelin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstain? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Let's take up item 7B as in Boy, base reuse plan reassessment report. Is there anyone that wants to comment? Michael, do you want to comment on this, or? Yes, sir.
Yes, as Jonathan moves over to the microphone, Category 3 are items that, there's a summary included in this board report. This is an outgrowth of the 2012 Base Reuse Plan Reassessment Report. Category 3 items were implementation of base reuse plan policies and programs, and Jonathan will give you detail about the status we're at on Category 3.
Thank you.
In
Jonathan?
fact, I think we do have a PowerPoint if that board's desired to see that.
Might as well, it's been pulled. As long as it's not an hour long. While we're waiting, was it Ms. Stone who pulled this item? Ms. Stone, would you like to come up and make your comments before we have the presentation, or do you want to wait till after the presentation? Okay, thank you.
I could get started and just note that there's a attachment A to this board report in your packet, so if you want to follow along. It's a similar PowerPoint presentation.
Can't hear you, Jonathan.
Sorry. In your packet, there's an item, attachment 8A. Oh, I'm sorry, it's up here now. So this is a similar presentation to the one I made to the administrative committee on November 3rd. It's just a status report and update on Category 3. As the board knows, the reassessment report that was completed in 2012 by EMC Planning analyzed progress made on the base reuse plan and broke a number of analysis points into 5 different categories. And Category 3 is completion of policies and programs in the base reuse plan and implementing those. So as the reassessment report notes, there's some reasons why some of these policies and programs are deemed incomplete today. Some of the reasons are because a triggering event has yet to occur for that policy or program to be implemented. Others are not contingent on some event occurring first, so those can be moved forward towards completion. And so what FORA staff did, we've met with the various jurisdictions that have Category 3 items listed in the base reuse plan reassessment. The entities that still have these Category 3 items to complete include FORA, the County of Monterey, the City of Seaside, City of Marina, and City of Delray Oaks. So we've met individually with the jurisdictions. With exception of Delray Oaks, there were just 2 policies and programs that basically the triggering event hasn't occurred yet for Delray Oaks, so there was no reason to meet with Delray Oaks. Just an update on the FORA Category 3 items. The reassessment report identifies 6 items for FORA. There's 8 listed up here. So the first 6 are those identified in the reassessment report. There was one for residential design guidelines, one for commercial design guidelines, one for designating truck routes, another for coordinating on truck routes, and then 4 to develop a master drainage plan, which is complete through our stormwater management plan for the base, and draft policies to implement design guidelines for bluff development overlooking the Salinas Valley or Salinas River. And then the 2 added ones were the trails planning and the Oak Woodland Conservation Plan, which are jurisdiction policies or programs that go over multiple jurisdictions, so it made sense for FORA to coordinate with the jurisdictions on those and support that effort. Just a summary of where each of the jurisdiction is on their work plan towards completion of Category 3. So looking at the reassessment report, we met with the county. They looked at the different programs and policies, their list to complete. They found that 8 items were completed already, that 40 were still incomplete, 4 were partially complete, 7 are still ongoing, and 3 were no longer applicable. So the full report, and there's a web link here to see the full report about notes on each of the items. This is just an example of one of the Category 3 items in the county, and this is Residential Land Use Program B-2.1, and it's about the county revising its zoning ordinance for uses in the counties that are appropriate for forward planning. So basically, make their zoning compatible with the forward land use, a map designated in the base reuse plan. The reassessment noted that East Garrison's specific plan has updated the zoning, and then the jurisdiction's subsequent note here is that it's part of the county's implementation program to complete the zoning ordinance in other areas on the base. City of Seaside, on their summary, out of looking on the reassessment report, Category 3 items, 2 were complete, 31 are still incomplete, 5 are partially complete, and 3 are ongoing. And their method of their work plan is going to be to complete their general plan update, include these policies and programs in that update, so that they'll be addressed through the general plan update that will be completed shortly. And that effort is going to start, I believe, beginning of 2016. And then the City of Marina program looked at the Category 3 items from their staff, and the feedback here was 16 of the policies and programs were already complete, 20 are still incomplete, and the work plan is yet to be determined to address the still incomplete items. As mentioned with Delray Oaks, the triggering event hasn't occurred yet in Delray Oaks, and that is the development of a office park parcel adjacent to the Frog Pond expansion. So once that planning starts to occur, then it would, Delray Oaks can comply with those 2 policies and programs that are needed for addressing their Category 3 items. And then this is just the next steps of what to complete with Category 3. So the 4 items, this is the report today to the board. Then the board would consider the regional urban design guidelines adoption, which would move forward towards completion of a number of Category 3 items. The Trails Working Group that FORA is convened would report to the working group on the blueprint, then take that to the PRAC, and eventually to the board for review on a trails plan for Fort Ord. And then on the Oak Woodlands front, that FORA would begin with the RFP process and bring that to the board for moving ahead through consultant selection. And there's more on that, which is also on this consent agenda, which was pulled. It's item 7D. And then just a note on jurisdictions items that they're moving towards completion of their Category 3 items. So that's the end of the presentation. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Jonathan, very much. Is there any board member has any questions relating to this particular item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. Ms. Stone, if you would like to. And please, today, anyone, the microphone over here is to be used. Mayor Rubio and I have a problem with hearing on our right side, so we wanted to get everyone close to. No, the right side you can't hear.
Yvonne Stone, Executive Director of the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. I appreciate the little presentation, but when you're talking to the public, we need to know what plans you're talking about, not categories. We need to have the actual words and what the plans are. And I'm really concerned about what plans are included for the base reuse plan, the original plan for the community. I'm assuming that we're talking about all different projects and buildings, but I don't understand where the plans are for the local community, for the economic recovery of the communities, and what their plans are. Our dreams that were in this plan in the beginning, they seem to be overshadowed right now and not included. We're talking about East Garrison. We had all kind of housing built in East Garrison. We have people talking about affordable housing out there. There is none, because most of the people that went to apply did not receive any of the units. We see housing being built on Engine Road. None of those housing that I know about, I didn't even know about the project. As far as I know, they're not for a low-income people or affordable housing. We're talking about military families. We just had Veterans Day. We're talking about all the homeless vets. What about their families? I heard about some units on FORA that's going to be set aside for some homeless vets, but that is not enough. It's not inclusive of the community. There is nothing being said about the local community that was here, whose families were made up of military people. And the bad thing about it is we're doing all this celebrating, but we're not doing regulating and showing responsibility for what has happened here. And I know you don't like to hear about it, but it's still here. It's in our face. It's real, and it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Anyone else in the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Michael, would you take a moment, if you could, to address the question of lacking of affordable housing, and or Jonathan, as to the category 3s? Thank you.
So regarding affordable housing, Category 3 deals with a number of residential policies on former Fort Ord. And in addition to that, the FORA boards adopted a policy with consistency determinations. It's policy T within the consistency analysis, part of the master resolution. And so that specifies that the goal for the board is to have 20% affordable housing and encourage, in addition to that, 10% workforce, which would be 120 to 180% of area median income.
Thank you, Jonathan. Public comment is closed. Bring it back, and we need a motion to approve this since it was pulled. It's been moved. May I get a second to? It's been moved by Mayor Rubio and seconded by Board Member Oglesby. Any comments on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstain? Passed unanimously. That takes care of the consent agenda, except for 7D, which we intentionally have pulled. This is in part due to some inquiries received by the board, actually the executive officer, and we thought it was appropriate to have it presented in such a way that we could have some discussion if it's necessary. So please proceed.
Yes, Chair O'Connell, members of the board, Ted Lopez, who you were introduced to last month as our second most recent hire at the former Fort Ord, will do this Oak Woodland Conservation Planning report.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, Chair O'Connell, members of the board. Ted Lopez, Associate Planner. This item was previously mentioned by Jonathan as a policy aspect of Category 3. This is the Oak Woodland Conservation Planning, and there have been several questions that have been raised regarding this process itself. The policy and the emphasis of this component is based on the base reuse plan. And as part of the policies of the base reuse plan, which is part of your attachment A, a working group was formed to begin looking at the process to plan for a conservation area that involves oaks. And the status, there's also a status, and the purpose of it was, again, to begin a process and work and coordinate with local jurisdictions on developing a conservation planning, management, and mitigation plan. Essentially, the component of the Oak Woodland area plan is looks at Monterey County and the city of Seaside, and there's also the Marina City County, Seaside County. But basically, it emphasizes the Monterey County and city of Seasides under their programs to look at this. And here, as part of your staff report, is the area of Fort Ord that was looking at and will be exploring the Oak Woodland Conservation Area. I do want to emphasize that and note that the working group, there have been questions regarding who is part of this working group. The working group is represented by staff members from the County of Monterey, the City of Seaside, Marina, Cal State University, Monterey Bay, Monterey Peninsula College, UCM Best, and in our research to find out other organizations or other agencies that have been invited to participate in this working group, Chartwell College, Chartwell School was invited to participate. And essentially, those are the components or the agencies that have been invited to participate in the working group. Only 2 meetings have been held regarding this conservation plan, and the working group held their meetings almost a year ago, with the last one being November 20th, excuse me. And so the purpose of the working group and this whole process is that to, again, develop a coordinated approach to oak conservation management for this area. We are currently, staff is currently looking at a request for a proposal. When the RFP is completed as a draft, staff will bring it back before the board for review, and again, it will be an opportunity for comment, public comment on the request for proposal and scope of services. The contracted or the selected consultant that comes out of this process will look at a public outreach and a public participation component so that we receive comments and public input from the community. I think staff has looked at this and discussed this, and this is a very, very key and important aspect of this project. That completes my presentation on item 7D, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any board member have any questions? Yes, Board Member Hoffa.
Yeah, regarding the makeup of the working group, how many of the members of the working group are trained biologists?
Well, I haven't asked specifically for any certification on that, so my understanding is that they're staff level members, and I think part of the process when we hire a consultant to do this analysis, one of the requirements that we could include in the scope of services that a trained biologist be included in that process.
Speaking for myself, I think that would be a good idea given the scope of what we're talking about here. And also maybe some of the educational institutions may have folks on their campuses who might be able to contribute that kind of scientific background.
Any other questions by board members? Board Member Morton.
I did have some questions. In our staff report, we were provided pages from the reassessment identified as 3-61 through 3-62, I guess. I'm having a hard time reading that slight print. And in that, there's redacted provisions they have lined out. Is that implying that those sections have been omitted from the reassessment report?
No.
So reading those sections, because I did go back to the reassessment document, and what's been X'd out here in the staff report, I guess, is to find out why it was X'd out. First question.
Board Member Morton, in my experience, when highlighting an area or a part to focus on a particular item, usually what I've done is that I'll X out the other areas so that not only the community can focus in, but all board members and everyone can see what we're referring to. So essentially, we're highlighting these
Yep.
policies on there just by crossing out. So they remain in effect. I just want to make that clear to all the board members in the community.
Okay, and I think that was a discrepancy, and I'm not faulting how you did it, but I'm just saying that the public's weigh-in on this in part was, or these parts eliminated. So the same policy, and you pointed out, and Jonathan pointed out, that there's multiple jurisdictions, including Marina, and as Jonathan pointed out, we're trying to do a coordinated Oak Woodland conservation plan with all jurisdictions. And yet this staff recommendation, item 7D, appears to be limited only to the benefit of Seaside and the county. Is there a reason that Delray Oaks or Marina or any other jurisdiction with Oak Woodlands is omitted from this RFP process, and for us to have our Oak Woodlands also addressed?
So the response to that question is the policy, biological resources policy B-2 is similar between the county and Seaside, where it mentions specific polygons. The city of Marina and city of Delray Oaks don't have a similar policy or program in their base use plan. So that's why those two are singled out, because they're adjacent to one another and they actually refer to each other as being a conservation area that crosses the border between Seaside and the county.
So our staff report has attached to it a map that was recently drawn by Josh Metz. No offense to Josh Metz. But I do understand that the Oak Woodlands that are depicted on that map are contiguous and in the county and the city of Seaside. But in our reassessment report, figure 4.4-1, the Oak Woodland areas, which is identified in the base for use plan, which I have a copy of, shows contiguous Oak Woodlands all the way up into Marina, into our airport, and a much broader perspective. I don't know if we can show this on the overhead. And so that's why it seems to me arbitrary that Marina is excluded. Can I show this?
Yeah.
Rather than your map?
Yeah, you're correct. The Oak Woodlands are distributed within City of Marina, City of Delray Oaks, and City of Monterey. I'm just being specific about the policies that refer to this area in the county and Seaside, that there isn't a similar policy in Marina that identifies specific parcels or polygons. It's a broader policy in Marina.
But you did also say that Marina has an obligation to address its Oak Woodlands and its conservation of Oak Woodlands pursuant to the base reuse plan.
Yes, they do. And Marina also has a tree policy that addresses tree preservation.
Any other questions by any other board member? Yes, Board Member Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate some of the questions that I had asked got answered in the process, and there's one that I just want to make sure that I'm understanding properly. Did you say that there will be opportunities for public participation as you're developing the RFP and the scope of work for the consultant?
Yes, Board Member Parker, there will be opportunities, and that's part of the process of when we hire the consultant.
Thank you.
And then we'll put that in there specifically into the scope of services.
So I'm trying to determine whether you're going to get public input on the scope of services itself, the design of the RFP.
Yes, we can do that, we will do that, and then
Great.
incorporate that.
Thank you. And then I had another question, and it flew right out of my mind. Yeah, right. Okay, well, if I think of it, I'll ask it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Board Member Lucius.
Thank you. I understand from this agenda item, we're simply being asked to receive the report, but the decision to actually hire a consultant and conduct this plan, that decision was already made and not decided by the board?
Michael?
I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Maybe I can answer it like this. The scope of services and the request for proposal will need to be authorized by this board. So it has to come back. Okay? That's number one. The second part of it is, usually, and I think there may have been one or two cases where board authorized us to proceed without it on very small contracts, but typically we bring those contracts back for the board to approve when we also execute a contract.
I think Board Member Parker has her question back in mind.
And that was it. Are we going to approve the?
See that?
Thank you. Yep.
Executive
Great
Officer read your mind,
minds.
yes. Board Member Morton, please.
Yes, I just am reading my reassessment report, and I'm finding a discrepancy in how I understood what was just said, that the biological resource policy B-2, which is referenced in our staff report, includes, it specifically says that at the site-specific planning proceeds for polygons that list a bazillion, the county shall coordinate with the cities of Seaside and Marina, California State University, and FORA, and other interested entities in the designation of an oak woodland conservation area connecting the open space habitat in the planning. So if the reassessment report identified that the base reuse plan included all of the entities, again, I am asking that this scope of work be expanded to include all of the entities.
So when we met as the Oak Woodland Working Group, we invited City of Marina staff. Those polygons that you listed or mentioned are the pink areas on this map. So it does go into Marina, but it's within campus of CSUMB. So the Marina staff attending noted that there aren't any identified parcels from these from the list of polygons within City of Marina where the City of Marina staff has, or City of Marina City has influence. It's on the campus. So that was the note from the group. Now, the policy doesn't since it doesn't list the City of Marina parcels, the city staff said, well, what are we doing in this meeting? We don't have a parcel, we don't have a dog in this fight.
So in follow-up, are we developing different oak woodland conservation projects for different localities as opposed to the base reuse plan requesting a total program and a quality of program for all oak woodlands on the former Fort Ord?
So
it seems economical to do it all as one policy.
the issue here is that the policy identifies these areas in the county and Seaside. They don't identify a City of Marina controlled parcel. So that's why we've coordinated with City of Marina, but we couldn't identify a parcel that was affected within the jurisdiction. There are other policies listed in the base reuse plan within City of Marina about generally oak woodland preservation, but it's not parcel specific. So it's up to the city how they want to implement those policies or programs.
Okay, any other questions by board members? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Is there anyone in the public has any questions relating to this particular oak woodland conservation planning? If you do, please come up to the mic here on my left. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, did you say questions or just comments?
Questions and comments are fine.
Okay. I have some of both. Michael Salerno, Keep Fort Ord Wild. KFOW was one of the groups that inquired about this agenda item, and some of the questions have been answered, and I still have some other questions, comments that haven't. First off, probably more than any single issue, the oak woodlands are of profound interest to the public. So it's disappointing that this item was on a consent calendar in the first place and was only taken off consent when there were inquiries from different groups. So my understanding is there's been 2 meetings in 2014 of this working group. Were those public meetings? And beyond the agencies that were listed, were there any other attendees at those? So maybe I'll just ask the questions and then you can respond to all of them. So was there anybody else at those meetings besides the public agencies, and was the broader public invited? I did also have the issue with the strike-through language in the staff report. It was very confusing and gave the impression that the item may have been edited in an official capacity. I'd also make the comment that the deliverables appear to be one. It says one oak management plan for Seaside and one for the county. I agree with Board Member Morton's comments that it seems really inefficient to have 2 different plans, maybe a third coming along if Marina gets involved, and those plans could potentially conflict, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mae Green Smith, and this is a beautiful setting, but I'm not really hearing that much about the community, the people that are available to be a part of all of this, especially the working group. I'm with Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network, and we're really having a heart for the community, and I'm not hearing what you have and what can we obtain, how much land can we obtain to minister to the people here in Monterey Peninsula. I'm very seriously, I'm concerned because I'm not hearing that much about the people, so I'd like a response to that.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Margaret Davis. I appreciate the comments of Mr. Salerno. The Oak Woodlands is probably the most important issue to many people out on Fort Ord. And for this, the Oak Woodland conservation needs to be considered as a whole, not piecemealed out by jurisdiction and polygon. Animal movements, the needs of nature don't respect that kind of a line, but we do need something that addresses it as a whole. And I must say that speaking as a member of the public and having heard people talk about FORA for many years, the crossing out of text that isn't crossed out in the original with no explanation, there not being any notice to the FORA board or to the public that this group even existed, the selective focus on Seaside and the county, which very strongly suggests to a suspicious public that this is about greasing the skids for Monterey Downs, is not a good tactic for FORA. You gained a lot of public respect with the open meetings that you had on economics and design in these last 2 years, and this looks more like going back to the reputation that FORA, for better or worse, enjoyed of being sneaky and skullduggery and getting things done behind people's back. I think this needs to be just as forthcoming, just as open, and you will find that the public is very keenly interested in discussing this. Your scope needs to include biology and animal movements and other non-rigid items for it to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public?
Yvonne Stone, Director, Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. I'm completely horrified at how many times in the word community and public has been used at these meetings. Even talking about the city of Seaside, the people that I know in Seaside that are disadvantaged communities are not included in any decisions. You can go and talk to them anytime. A lot of them are sick. They are not included. The base reuse plan needs to be inclusive of the local community. There is no other way to put this. Gentrification is not or should not be allowed. We have 3% African American on this peninsula. In Monterey County, 3% out of 100%, because a third of those of our community is not here anymore. And nobody seems to be concerned about that, but we're concerned because we were here and we are still here. So we have all the figures, we have all the knowledge, and that's why we're not being included in any of the committees, in the FORA board itself. Or we can come and be a public. But that's all right, because it doesn't matter. All the stuff that's going on around the country, there needs to be a new way of releasing all of these so-called regulations that the agencies are putting before us, and we have to get up and, let's give them a minute or two or three to express themselves, and then let's forget about it. I really hope that you consider what is being done here, because the rest of the country is all headed this way. And I really beg you to pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Mr. Solano had two questions, if I recall correctly. One was, were the meetings in September and November of 2014 public meetings? And also, were there, to your recollection, any members of the public who attended?
I'll address that since Ted wasn't a member of FORA staff at that time.
Lucky Ted, yeah.
So those meetings in September, they did not include members of the public. We had those meetings just to identify these were the policies and programs in the base use plan reassessment category 3 items. If you read those policies and programs, they say City of Seaside coordinate with these property owners, and they list them. And similarly, the county program says, work with these polygon owners, these property owners. And the purpose of both policies and programs is to connect, identify, and designate a Oak Woodland conservation area that connects conservation areas from the south to the landfill. So you can see the landfill is on this map. It's above Intergarrison Road. I'll try to point it out here. So this is the landfill, and these are conservation areas to the south. So those initial meetings, we met with the landowners to coordinate on completion of these policies and programs, what would be the best approach. What we heard back was that there wasn't sufficient budget from the jurisdictions to address these, and it made sense to coordinate. So FORA staff included that in the budget for the annual budget, which the board adopted at the May meeting this year. So since we have it in the budget, we're bringing it back that our plan is to coordinate and go through a consultant selection process to help in achieving this policy and programs for the two jurisdictions.
Will there be, that brings a question that's obvious, will the future meetings be public meetings? And if not, why not?
Will the future meetings be public meetings? The intention has been so far to coordinate with the landowners. The chair can make a committee. This is not a standing committee. So it's not a Brown Act committee, is my understanding. It's just a working group. If it's the desire of the board that this become a public meeting, a public committee with public participation, that change can be made.
Thank you. I guess with my authority as chair, I'll have to make that decision in the near future. I may have missed the question, I believe it was by Ms. Smith, the second speaker, and I apologize if anyone on the board remembers the question. It had to do with, I think, community and land being obtained or being available. Jonathan, you?
Yes, one of the questions Mr. Salerno asked was, I believe, a statement that it didn't make sense to make 2 or 3 plans, but to make one plan. It would include county, seaside, and city of Marina. So I'm trying to just address the city of Marina question. So you see city of Marina borders are within these black lines here to the north. So the policies don't identify a polygon other than the CSUMB parcel here. So in addressing this policy or program, there aren't city of Marina parcels identified where the city has jurisdictional control. It doesn't mean that if the city wants to add on to Oak Woodlands, maybe adjacent to the landfill or someplace, the city's free to do that. It's just not identified in this policy or program as something that needs to be done.
Thank you. I still don't feel that I got the question answered that I think Ms. Smith put. Could you, I apologize to the board, I just missed writing it down.
Thank you. I was just concerned about how much land can be available for the public, the people. We need land for the people so we can build homes. The woodlands are fine, all of this is fine, the animals are secure, but the people are not secure. We need to have at least 10 to 50 acres available for homes.
Thank you.
So how much land can we have to build?
Jonathan, I don't know if you can answer that, but if you want to take a shot at it.
Well, I would say a number of projects are entitled or working towards being entitled, and I'll just give an example. The dunes on Monterey Bay here is, I believe, 290 some acres. A large portion of that is designated for homes. So there's a number of land, the development areas, I'll just point at the map, their development areas are adjacent to some of the natural areas which are in the interior. So there's lots of land on former Fort Ord that's planned for development.
Thank you. Okay. Public comment has been closed. Let me have a motion, and then I'll ask if there are any board members that have comments that what they want to make. Could I have a motion as to the acceptance of this presentation, since it was pulled? Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Edelin and second by Board Member Lucius. Are there any comments by board members relating to the motion and the item? Board Member Beach, followed by Board Member Hopper, followed by Board Member Ochoa, and hopefully we'll get out of here today. Go ahead, please.
To me, observing the comments from the public and the board so far, it seems to me we need to answer the burning question of the pink polygons and find out whether it's possible to deviate from the letter of this policy that says this Oak Woodland thing in its narrowest understanding is to address what's identified in B2 and the polygons, et cetera, and go in favor of less sneaky, if we want to call that, but just, are we bound to keep the letter of this program if it's not meeting the needs of this community and this board? If the community and the board prefer to see the Oak Woodlands looked at in a different way than outlined by this narrow language, do we have a prerogative to direct the staff now to say, it's a good start, but actually the zeitgeist is that we think of this as a biological whole, just like you would of a watershed, and let's expand it enough to put these other issues to rest at the same time as we're doing this. Is that within our purview as a board, as we receive this report, to line this discussion up for the next time? Question to staff.
Thank you. This is a comment period, but is anyone on the, Jonathan, do you have an answer to that question?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the question was, can we take this further than just the polygons that were listed? And that's certainly possible, yes.
Thank you. I love short answers. Yes, Board Member Hoffa, followed by Board Member Ochoa.
I'd like to make an alternative motion that we receive the report, but we give additional direction to staff to, and the working group to consider a comprehensive approach to the conservation, and that the working group be expanded to include more members of the community and as well as scientists, the scientific community, as well as the broader community.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask Authority Council, this was on as an information, not an information or action item. Is the making of a motion, other than just to accept this particular presentation, beyond the scope of this agenda?
Since it's just an information item, it would be beyond the scope of the agenda to do anything other than accept the report.
Thank you.
My question was whether we had the purview to direct staff. So is the answer no? We cannot direct staff?
For purposes of this report, I would say the motion is to accept the report. I don't think you're going to be precluded forevermore from directing staff on the issue, but I think for purposes of today, we're accepting the report.
I'm sorry, are you drawing the distinction that we cannot direct staff within the motion because the item before us, but we can direct staff in general? Or are you saying we can't direct staff today, this Friday the 13th, but some other Friday we could direct staff? I'm not sure.
I believe, here's my concern, I believe it's just an information item. I think that if it were to come back or informally, it could be discussed with the staff relating to your concerns, but today we just have an information item that we have to just address as an information item.
That's my understanding.
Thank you. Board Member Ochoa, and
Yeah, I wanted to second some of the earlier comments. I found some of the points made about the piecemeal nature of this approach compelling. It seems that just like regional economic development doesn't respect jurisdictional boundaries, neither does the philosophy behind the setup of these conservation areas or these woodlands, given the fact that the animals, the species don't recognize those boundaries either. It would make sense for us to take a holistic approach, even if the different jurisdictions have the authority to act independently. If that action is informed by a holistic framework, we can all do better as a community. So I found that compelling, and I would be interested in seeing how we as a board can provide direction to the staff, not necessarily in this motion, but maybe elsewhere on the agenda today, and if not today, in another meeting.
thank you. Anyone else?
Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make
Board Member Gunter.
I'd like to make an additional substitute motion that we not accept this report until we have more information.
Second.
Okay, we have a
That was
substitute.
my-
This is what makes chair fun. So we have a substitute motion not to accept this until we have more information, and that's been made by Mayor Gunter and seconded by Board Member Morton. Is there any discussion on the substitute motion or the first motion? And don't feel the need to. Board Member Edelman, followed by Board Member Parker, and then Board Member Rubio.
Look, I know the intentions here are honorable, and we all want to preserve the Oaklands as much as we possibly can, but the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, may be popping out when we do this. Management plans, by their very nature, are restrictive in nature. They tell the individuals under the management plan what they cannot do. Now, there's some coordination, but primarily, if you look at the management plans we have, they tell you what you can't do. Also, the larger the area, the more jurisdictions you put into a cookie cutter, one-size-fits-all management plan, the more compromises and the less effective they are. If you look around the table here, we have elected officials from every one of the individuals involved with the Oakland Woodlands. We all want to preserve them. We're all working together. Otherwise, I'd rather keep the plan the way it is under the base reuse plan. Let us work together, use that committee as a way of coordinating in a voluntary basis, rather than using a hammer and telling everybody what they have to do and try and make everybody adhere to a plan that may or may not fit in their jurisdiction.
Thank you. Board Member Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the substitute motion because I think it's clear that although I think we the comments today, we can give direction to staff. I think they're listening. But I just think that this, the Oak Woodlands conservation is a very important issue. It's controversial. Obviously, there are a lot of people interested in it. So I think we need to make sure that we are providing as many opportunities for the public to participate as possible. I also think that it's clear that the Oak Woodlands are quite extensive on the former Fort Ord, and to just pick out a couple of places, that's much too narrow, and it's an inefficient use of everyone's time and energy, as well as just not making sense from from an environmental standpoint. So I appreciate the ability to bring this back with a little bit more opportunity to actually give the direction that I think we're aiming for. Thank you.
Board Member Rubio.
With all due respect to Mayor Gunter, I think the report embodies what has happened up to this point, and that's all it's meant to do. It's if we want to do anything prospective, I think it's on us as a board to let staff know what it is that we expect, to hold them to an expectation that they were to divine what we were thinking before they made this report, I think is unreasonable. I like the original motion to accept the report, and I think staff has heard everything that we're talking about. When they come back with a follow-up report, or when they bring back the scope of work, which we will decide what that scope of work is, we can make those adjustments to the policy. Because right now, they're working on a policy that we approved for them to work on. So it's not that I think this is the perfect situation, but we're not taking an action on the report other than to receive it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Board Member Morton.
If I may, in the staff report, the implication in accepting this report is that there would be a meeting of the group in November, December, as it previously existed, and that they would be preparing a draft request for proposal for us to look at. And the scope of that draft for proposal will be limited to what's in this report as opposed to the sentiment that's been made today. I'm trying to conserve our resources. We have a limited quantity of money, a limited quantity of time, and a general interest. As Marina, I'm very interested in being included in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lucius.
Just a procedural question. If this vote is not unanimous, will we have to vote to not receive a report again next month?
It would seem that
Yes.
it would seem next month it would come back. Yeah.
But as a point of, could that future agenda item also include another agenda item that would allow us to give the actual direction we want to give?
I would think that in the future, the item could come back as an information action item. But we have a substitute motion. Any other comments on the substitute motion? We'll have a roll call.
Well,
If
let
it-
me, you don't mind, do you, Chair?
I never mind. Go right ahead.
I'm not sure what you guys are trying to do, right? Other than stop progress on a former Fort Ord. We have more than enough information to accept this report right here. It's a conservation plan of Oak Woodlands. I don't know if we have the authority to include marinas, Oak Woodlands, that are not contiguous with the county or the city of Seaside or not already designated. And I don't know how the board gets their buy-in from that without the city council weighing in. So we have that. And then we say we want to coordinate it, regionally on parcels that are designated to be developed. So what are we going to put? We're going to say, let's save all the trees on the parcels that we know we want to develop because we have some Oak Woodland conservation plan. So let's just be careful about what we're talking about. And then the second point is when we talk about providing or opening up staff meetings, this was not a public meeting. These were staff level meetings. And so to come back and say that somehow we were, staff were being unethical or we missed the picture because staff did not invite the public, they were not required to invite the public. And I want us to be clear. And sometimes, the executive director needs to stand up and say, hey, These are good concerns, but that was not a concern when we're talking about staff level development or staff level meetings. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. And if we want to bring it back and talk about conservation of these oak woodlands, then that's fine. But then let's make sure people that are not concerned with developing or not concerned with conservation of these oak woodlands are at that same table. And so I thank the chair.
Thank you. Board Member Gunter, is the substitute motion to not accept this report at this time, but to bring it back as an information action item?
Yes, sir.
And the second holds? Okay. We'll have a roll call on that substitute motion. If it is not unanimous, it comes back, if it passes, it comes back at the December meeting. If it fails, then we vote on the original motion.
Okay.
Please.
On the substitute motion made by Mayor Gunter, seconded by Councilmember Morton, we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Beach.
I'm sorry, I'm pretty confused.
The motion is basically to not accept the report as it is, to bring it back in December or at a later time as an information action item with more information, obviously, in
And is it clear to the staff the direction that information should take? Or,
I
don't understand. This motion potentially just stops the discussion and delays it till the next month.
It brings it back as an information action item, which at the next meeting, we bring it forth, we can make motions
Oh, I
related
see.
to action.
So it's, okay, so the addition is the action piece, and somehow our lawyer is telling us we can't give direction at a meeting, which that I do not understand now, without without taking it to next month.
And
This I don't understand, so I will vote for the motion, yes.
The alternative is to accept the report or not.
okay, so the vote was yes for the substitute motion. One down,
Okay. One no.
one yes.
One yes to wait.
Yes.
Okay. Chair O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Edelin, Mayor Hoffa, Vice Mayor Hoffa,
Yes.
Mayor Gunter,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucius, Councilmember Morton, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby,
No.
Supervisor Parker, Mayor Pendergrass,
No.
Supervisor Phillips, Supervisor Potter, Mayor Rubio.
No.
So
Six.
that passes a vote of 7-6, I
7 to
believe.
6,
So
yes.
it'll be coming back either next month or January, hopefully as an information action item. Thank you all very much. It is now 26 minutes past 3, and we just get through the consent agenda. Very good job, people. I'm sorry? No. It was not unanimous. I was informing Mayor Rubio. Going, if I may, going to business item 8A, the Regional Urban Design Guidelines. This is an information action item. I understand the action item portion is to amend the existing contract. Who will be making the presentation? Josh? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'm back here with a follow-up from our recent workshop and public open house. Regional Urban Design Guideline project's been ongoing now for actively since winter of last year, but has a long history. I've shown this before, certainly from the reuse plan. Importantly, a decision by the board in 1999 in May to bypass the Regional Redevelopment Agency and pursue individual jurisdiction policies on urban design guidelines. Affected where we are today. In 2005, the board approved a Highway 1 design guidelines that addressed the design guidelines from 1,000 feet from the northbound center lane on Highway 1. And that carried us forward to the reassessment report in 2012, where the regional urban design guidelines were identified as outstanding items. They were discussed at the Fort Ord Colloquium in 2013, and then our 2014 work plan included funding for this project. There was a task force designated by the chair and a competitive RFP and consultant selection process that resulted in the selection of Dover Colon Partners as our lead for that project. We did a site visit in November of last year for about a week. We had multiple meetings with multiple jurisdictions. There was an extensive design charrette that took place in February of this year with 10 days of design activities and input and feedback. And then since then, we've been actively integrating and revising the guidelines to meet the expectations of the board and the community. We then had the workshop and open house last week where we had a fair amount of public involvement and feedback from the board, and we're now in the place where we need to advance the project through the beginning of next year to get to a final completion. Our workshop and open house, we had about 100 participants throughout the day, extensive written and verbal feedback, and generally we were pleased to have a feedback that we were on the right track. So our next steps are integrating that input, discussing amending the contract today to account for the extensive revision process that we've been forced to undertake, and work towards a completion for board consideration in February. Some of the key feedback we received are listed here. Increasing our focus on clarifying policy language generally in the document, providing for General Jim Moore future centers to be determined by the City of Seaside, distinguishing employment center status from at UCM Best from residential centers around the base, strengthening an economic development narrative, adding language to specify where these RUDG apply in certain pages, clarifying that the document addresses other areas to be determined. Key task force feedback included reinforcing all of those previous messages and strengthening the reuse plan and regional urban design guideline language, including the urban design guideline content and consultant reports as appendices to the main document. This was a vote taken by the task force and unanimous vote, clarifying how the urban design guidelines will be implemented or used to evaluate future consistency determinations, clarifying the urban design guideline flexibility language, and strengthening our definitions section. We also received extensive public feedback. We had 6 pages of comments from the public that we obtained just from our room over here. We also received a number of written comments as well. Again, strengthening economic benefit discussions, the economic benefits of good design, addressing affordable housing issues, clarifying trails, language, and representation, increasing gateways and corridors for national monument access. There were a fair amount of questions about the East Side Parkway design and enhancing public transit connections. So moving forward, we had a contract that expired. It will expire at the end of this month. It was short-term extended just to get through, get to this point. We're looking for an amendment that would extend it not to exceed June of next year. As you can see here, our target for staff training following board adoption in February would be in April, so if we could get it done sooner, we would. We have $30,000 carrying over from the current contract to address the final document and training. And there's additional money of $70,000 being from that was allocated in the 15-16 budget that we're coming to the board for approval to use for this amendment. So that's what's before you, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Josh. Just for purposes of the record, let the record show that Congressman FORA has appeared at the meeting, and I'm told by the executive office at 3:23. I don't know why that's important, but welcome.
Because I'm always late.
I thought it was because I misstated your assistant's first name, and she may have left, and I didn't get a chance to apologize to her.
She's still here.
Is she? Okay. Rochelle, wherever you are, I apologize. Thank you. Any questions of the board members? Going out to Congressman Farr.
Yes, thank you very much. I do apologize for being late. I'm very interested in the addressing here the scenic corridor. 50 years ago, my father put into the state highway plan that this corridor would be a scenic highway, and it's a bridesmaid waiting to be a bride, and all it takes is for local governments to nominate it by adopting their implementing zoning restrictions. And I thought we had done that, FORA had done that, and we encouraged everybody to get in, and I thought we would be a scenic highway by now, so we could put up the little poppy sign and know that billboards and other kinds of offensive signs wouldn't be along this corridor. And now I read that we still have to develop guidelines for that.
In answer to that question, Congressman, the Highway 1 corridor guidelines were adopted in 2005. They remain in force today. We did initiate an effort after the Highway 1 design guidelines were adopted with the region to try to solidify the scenic corridor from the Carmel River to the Salinas River, as I recall was your request, sir. We did have several meetings. I think there was some questions about the adoption of that corridor and how it would affect certain projects, so one or two entities opted out. But
Entities meaning cities?
Yes. So we could reinvigorate that process if that's a request of the board. It's not a component of these regional urban design guidelines because the Highway 1 design guidelines are adopted, they are in effect, and the jurisdictions are following them.
Yet we're not yet designated. I mean, as I recall it,
That's
the
correct, sir.
process is bottoms up. The state will accept the designation once the implementing ordinances or restrictions are in place. And they're in place, you said, by each of the respective cities along that corridor?
Yes, I was not anticipating the question, so I'm not currently aware of this, where we are in that process, but we did begin that process, pursued it for, I believe, a 2-year time frame, 2005 through 2007, and I don't recall where we were, but I remember we had to stop as we needed everybody in line to do the scenic corridor, and I think we didn't get everybody.
It's mentioned in here in many spots. That's why I picked it up. It's on page 25 and 26. But I think it's really important because what we all know here is that we sell scenery, and this area is noted throughout the world for its aesthetics, and sometimes commercial interests step on those aesthetics, as it happened when Seaside built what is now a Home Depot and allowed that. It's the only sort of billboard sign on the entire corridor. And FORA was going to make sure that they didn't happen along the former military. But I would hope that the communities that we could get back to that. The county has made Highway 68 a scenic corridor, county scenic corridor, and Los Orellos Great is a scenic corridor. And we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Highway Beautification Act and the dedication of Highway 1, the first state scenic highway. And the only thing that's missing in all of that is this corridor from Carmel to Salinas River and beyond.
Thank you.
Let's get it done.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, let's go out to the public. Anyone in the public have any questions or comments relating to this particular item?
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I find out what it's going to take to get it done?
After we close public comments, I'll have them address that. I
All right.
didn't consider that to be an actual question, but fine. Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. And how are you, Congressman Farr? It's good to see you here. We've been working for a very long time on trying to implement the plan, especially for the community that have been disengaged from the process and are still waiting for livable wage jobs and housing. And we also have a transportation problem because the rerouting of our buses have been taken away from areas that are critical, and people are having a very hard time getting around with their children and older people to get their doctor's appointments and medications. We have a very strange system here where you have to go everywhere when you have a doctor's appointment for different tests and labs and all that. It's not just a one-stop shop, which it should be. So I hope that what is going to happen with the transportation system, that you're going to look at how to re-engage those areas that have not been supported in the plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Any other member of the public?
Margaret Davis, while you're providing guidance on the RUDGs, I just wanted to mention, as somebody who's gone to some of those RUDG meetings, that it would be very helpful, I'm on the Marina Planning Commission, if the guidelines were tightened and given more teeth. It reads now as as an excellent handbook on good design, but such handbooks can be found in many places. We need, on plan commissions and other venues, to be able to have specific direction that development needs to conform to, and many of the shalls have been turned into mays. That's not overly helpful for us. And I know that the process started out with a really good bang, with a lot of charrettes, a lot of public input, a lot of maps and things like that. And now it's in a small conference room, and basically the members of the committee itself, and usually 2 representatives of Monterey Downs and a Monterey Community Partners member, and the public, and that rousing voice is pretty much drowned out, and it becomes more of a charrette between the developers and the document. Somewhere that has become an imbalance, and going forward, it would be great if that could be dealt with in a more helpful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And Michael, if you could address Congressman Farr's last question that I failed to have answered.
Yes, Chair. First of all, with Congressman Farr's comments about the scenic corridor, that's the next step after the Highway 1 design guidelines. We did adopt those again in 2005, and his question was, so what happens now? We did bring together all of the entities at the board's request from 2005 to 2007, and there was some concern about what limitations the scenic corridor would have on certain jurisdictions. I think in the end we got an answer that the limitations are very minimal, if any. Essentially, the design corridor just is a design corridor. It's a scenic corridor. Does not actually give restrictions beyond. So I think there was some reticence to get involved, and so the board elected to postpone any discussions on that. I think that to reinvigorate that outside of their regional urban design guidelines, if it's the direction of the board, staff would be happy to bring the parties back together and to see if we can put together some compromises that would get everyone on the table to do the scenic corridor.
Thank you. Now is the time for a motion. The recommendation is basically to provide direction regarding approval of the draft regional urban design guidelines and to amend the Dover Cole and Partners contract. Do I have a motion from anyone on the board? So moved with a comment by Board Member Parker. Do I have a second? With or without a comment? Second by Board Member Beach. Yes, now is the time for comments. Board Member Parker?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, kind of 2 comments. One is specific to the question of General Jim Moore Boulevard being in or out of the design guidelines, and it seems to me that those are major intersections and they are clearly gateways, as gateways are defined in the base reuse plan. So I really don't see any rationale for excluding them from the guidelines. Then a more general comment. related to that, you know, I can see that the jurisdictions don't like FORA oversight or being held to the base plan. It's been an ongoing theme ever since, probably even before the base reuse plan was adopted, but it's certainly come up quite a bit recently with these design guidelines. But a decision was made by the state legislation that implemented FORA that this was to be a regional, that the base reuse plan was a regional plan that would be followed by the jurisdiction. The state ordered that we treat Fort Ord as a regional asset, not as a pie being cut up into different slices. And this is an important point that I think gets lost in the discussion. And so I want to read from the state legislation, which says, the legislature finds and declares that the planning, financing, and management of the reuse of Fort Ord is a matter of statewide importance, and that the powers and duties granted to the authority by this title shall prevail over those of any local entity, including any city or county, whether formed under the general laws of the state of California or pursuant to a charter and any joint powers authority. And that quote goes to my next point. I absolutely disagree with staff's representation that the cities and county are not required to modify our general plans to conform with these new guidelines. The base plan is a regional planning document. It trumps local plans just the way the Air District planning does. When the Air District modifies its regional rules, we have to update our policies accordingly. So it's no different with FORA. And I want to mention that in the memo, staff and council are quoting Jerry Bowden as the authority for the position that the jurisdictions don't have to follow. And I just have to say, Jerry Bowden is not a law or a precedent case in the law, and he's not a legal treatise. Although I wondered if maybe he was being quoted sort of in that lighthearted spirit of the footnote on page 2 where we're quoting from the Pirates of the Caribbean. My legal source is FORA's enabling legislation, which repeatedly, not just once, but repeatedly makes reference to scenarios where we change the base reuse plan after its initial adoption and the jurisdictions must follow along. So I want to read a couple of quotes. First, 67675A, the board shall prepare, adopt, review, revise from time to time, and maintain a plan for the future use and development of Fort Ord. End quote. Why would the legislature have given us the authority to revise from time to time the plan if we couldn't apply those changes to the jurisdictions? In the next, another section following, it says, in preparing, adopting, reviewing, and revising the reuse plan, the board shall be consistent with approved coastal plans, air quality plans, water quality plans, spheres of influence, and other county-wide or regional plans required by federal or state law other than local general plans, including any amendments subsequent to the enactment of this title. End of that quote. I'm going to repeat that phrase, other than local general plans. It means that we at FORA do not have to be consistent with local general plans, and the reason is we are the regional planning body, and the local plans must follow. Finally, I'm getting to the end. The legislation says, after the board has adopted a reuse plan pursuant to this title, any revision or other change to that plan which only affects territory lying within the jurisdiction of one member agency may only be adopted by the board if one of the following conditions is satisfied. End of the quote. What it does then is it lays out a process for applying a base reuse plan modification to only one of the jurisdictions. In other words, if it applies to more than one jurisdiction, that special process doesn't apply and the jurisdictions must follow. So I'm just repeating this and laying out what the legislation says because I think it's important to be very, very clear. I think we disrespect the federal and state governments and the entire community which was gifted this resource with continued efforts to undermine the regional concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Parker. Board Member Lucius.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment about the motion. I appreciate the draft regional urban design guidelines and the process that we've gone through thus far. However, part of the motion is also to adopt the amended contract for Dover Coal. And I don't approve of that part because there's an additional $70,000. And if you look at the breakdown of that additional $100,000 that is yet to be spent, $20,000 is devoted to just our board voting. So it says the board considers the regional urban design guideline adoption, and then board second vote, and that's $20,000. So we're spending $500,000 on this process, and then I'm not sure what happens next. I suspect what happens next is implementation, and for me, I would rather dedicate that money to actual implementation of these guidelines. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any other board member? Board Member Beach, followed by Board Member Farr.
A couple comments. Appreciate the legal review by Superintendent Parker. I wanted to point out that if you think about the public's comment, we have had a lot of members of the public at the RUDGE, and the fear that the developers are taking control of the ship is interesting to me, because one of the myths I've been trying to dispel in the time that I've been on this board is the idea that there is anything at odds with good planning and robust development. What's interesting to me is that the more specific and the more active the developers have become in this public and open process, the more enthusiastic. I don't want to speak for them. They can come to the mic at another meeting, I'm sure. That this, as we solidify the design guidelines, what we find is a tool for development. So what's interesting, has always been interesting to me, is the jurisdictions seem to fear that development will be undermined by providing the specificity that the developers actually want and crave and have been craving for 15 years. So that is the false dichotomy that we are trying to resolve with this process. I think we are getting there, actually. I have faith that we will get there. We will not get there if the board doesn't pay the consultant to get there. I don't know if the $20,000 is worth looking at. I'm presuming that that means preparation for those meetings and not to pay me, because I certainly would love to have $10,000 to come to these meetings instead of zero. But that, I'm assuming that's shorthand that's misleading. But I would urge, I mean, there have been a lot of bumps in this road, and we were at the PRAC discussing them yesterday. But pulling the plug when we're almost there on the cash does not seem wise to me, as much as I wish that we had already been there with the cash we had before. So,
Thank you. Board Member Farr.
Well, thank you very much. As a co-sponsor, co-author of Senator Mello's bill, when I was in the State Assembly running for this position I have now, that was the intent. It came out of, as James Parker stated, and I think Mayor Pendergrass and I are the only people in this room that were there in the first meeting, which Leon Panetta had set up as a regional response to the base closure process. They had nominated Fort Ord as base closure, and we formed not just Marina and Seaside, but in the county of Monterey, but the whole Monterey Peninsula plus the rest of Monterey County as a local response committee. Out of that, when we learned that the base indeed was going to be closed, because of that continuity and because of the sense of arguing that the base was a regional asset, came the idea that we ought to create a regional planning body. Think about it. I mean, none of you would have to be here, because for the federal government, all that was needed was a redevelopment agency called the Local Reuse Commission, right, Michael? Local Reuse Authority. As defined by federal law, that could be a redevelopment agency. The original opposition to the Mello bill came from Seaside and Marina, who wanted to do a joint powers agreement to create their own JPA. They needed the third big landowner in the land jurisdiction in the county. And Sam Karras was the county supervisor at the time, and he refused to allow the county to become part of that JPA. If they had formed that GPA, none of us would be here. So this body was formed, and you wouldn't have to come to all these meetings all these years if it wasn't for the idea that this would be a regional planning body. And I think that I can understand the underlying jurisdictions, but I also think we're all here. And this has probably been one of the greatest organizations to have us really look at the whole of Monterey Peninsula. And I would hope that as you go about this, that you don't just go to the lowest common denominators and give all of that micromanagement decision-making to a community that isn't on board with the greater concept of how you manage the aesthetics and infrastructure of this base. It is indeed a regional process and a regional decision.
Thank you. Board Member Edelin?
Yeah, we spent several years on the regional urban design guidelines, meeting after meeting. We've had the community involved, lots of environmentally concerned citizens. We've had developers. We've been grinding sausage right and left, trying to compromise. We came up with a document this last time we got together, and we have the draft regional urban design guidelines. And I think it's a good compromise. In there, I specifically asked at our last meeting if outside the regional urban design guidelines focus on gateways, and as rightly as it should. And I asked at the last meeting, I said, outside the gateways, if a jurisdiction wants to do something that doesn't specifically relate to the guidelines, can they do it? And the answer was a definitive yes. Okay, with all due respect, Supervisor Parker, she's very passionate, and I understand where she's coming from. Just because we have one director that says now General Jim Moore Boulevard should be part of the regional urban design guidelines, I totally disagree. We've gone through public process, hundreds of people commenting and so forth. We have a document right now. We're looking at approving that document. And one director right now can't automatically snap their fingers and say General Jim Moore Boulevard will be part of that process. It doesn't work that way. If we want to include other areas or other gateways, we go back and we go through the entire sausage making process over again. But as is right now, we have the document. We're looking at that document, and it should stand.
Board Member Rubio, followed by Board Member Morton.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I think we're getting a little excited here over something that really isn't as we're not that far apart. The city of Seaside just wants to reserve the right to identify its own gateways and city centers. We know that General Jim Moore is a regional roadway, so therefore it is part of the regional guidelines. And we know that whenever a regional road or a gateway or a center occur, these guidelines will apply. It's not that difficult. What we don't want is for the Fort Ord Reuse Authority to decide where our city center is going to be. That's our job. But when we do have a city center, we'll abide by the regional guidelines as described in the RUJ. It's not that difficult. What we want to preserve is our ability to do our own land planning. The guidelines that are in place in terms of where the regional roads are going to be, where the connectors are, where the gateways identified in the base reuse plan are, no problem. And it says, and others. And that should say, and others as defined by the local jurisdictions. Very simple. And we've gone through this, and as Jerry described it, sausage making, the city of Seaside has provided numerous documents and numerous comments, and we're not trying to kill regional guidelines, we're just trying to make sure that they're well defined and consider the jurisdictions as well as the needs of the base reuse plan. Thank you.
Board Member Morton, did you?
Just quickly, I think Supervisor Parker for reminding all of us of the structure of why we're here, that as a regional board, City of Marina must adhere to the base reuse plan. As the City of Marina City Council, all of our projects that are on the former Fort Ord must be consistent with the base reuse plan, and to the extent the guidelines apply, have to be there. So the things that come alarming to me is when our executive director says people opt out, and the legislation is saying that nobody has that choice as a jurisdiction to opt in or out, that the reuse plan is the authority, that's what dictates for the lands that we were granted pursuant to the base reuse plan. So I appreciate her reminding us of all of that, and that I'm looking forward to these urban design guidelines furthering that goal.
Thank you. Board Member Oglesby.
With respect, I don't think that's what the executive director said. It was another process. People opt out mean they didn't want to participate, so it stalled. So he couldn't get the agreement with people. And I think Director Parker did a good job of telling us, explaining the authority that we have, enabling legislation with that authority. But if that is true, then that means all it takes is a majority of this board to say enough conservation, enough economic or enough educational development, and let's focus on economic development. So we can't have it both ways. You can't say we're the deciding body and we can conserve more Oakland conservation area, oak trees, but we don't have the authority to say enough is enough. 17,000 acres for the national park is enough. So we need to be careful. And like the mayor said, Mayor Rubin said, we are compromising. We are compromising. But if this development parcels have trees on them, then some trees need to be cut down. So the question is conservation on those areas and design guidelines. No one wants to put, no one wants to put ugly buildings on the side of the road and take away. I understand. I heard the congressman say we sell aesthetics here. That's fine. But when we start dictating where you put your own buildings on your own land, then my point is, if you guys want to have that authority, then 7 members had the same authority to say we won't even compromise there. So I just caution wise counsel, because I would like to compromise, and I think we are. And I don't think these guidelines were done in a room with just a developer. If the public doesn't come to these meetings anymore, then how is that the board's problem? So it's not all on us. I would just say, be careful what you wish for.
Thank you. No other comments. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. She did. Board Member Lucius had to leave. She expressed that she was going to vote against it, but she has family commitment that she had to leave at 4 o'clock. So maybe someone did a great job of just talking to 401. I don't know. Anyhow, thank you all very much. We will now go on business item 8B, Marina Coast Water District for a facilities agreement dispute resolution. This is the second vote on this item. Will we have a short presentation, Michael, or Steve, or Jonathan, or John? Pick one. Here goes Steve. Thank you.
Members of the board, this item returns for second vote. The motion is to confirm the agreement resulting from the facility dispute resolution with the Marina Coast Water District as stated in the August 10 letter that went from FORA to Marina Coast Water District. A full presentation was made at the previous board meeting, and staff is available to answer any particular questions that board members or the public may still have.
Thank you, Steve. John, Authority Council, do you have any input that you want to give, or should we just go to questions?
Nothing substantive, other than this is up for a second vote, and that's where we are. If there are other options that the board wishes to consider, now's the time.
Thank you. Any member of the board have any questions about this item? Yes, Board Member Potter, followed by Board Member Parker.
So originally, there was the concept of facilitating and recovery of costs that Marina Coast had incurred in regards to their previous regional project. That's not in there anymore?
Supervisor, nothing has been changed, so all of that would still be in there. It was a process by which we would be willing to talk about general concepts relative to recovery of costs, but limited to the specific language that's included in the facilities agreement regarding appropriate capital and facilities costs. So specifically excluded from any cost recovery were any kind of litigation recovery, any kind of recovery relative to desal plants that were not authorized by this board, et cetera. And that was very specifically delineated in the documentation.
That'll end my questions and opine later.
Thank you. Board Member Parker?
My question is, it doesn't look to me as though the staff report deals with the fact that what FORA put forward and then what Marina Coast responded, that there were discrepancies there. So I guess my question is staff asking us to believe that Marina Coast's silence on the differences means that they agree with our staff's interpretation of what the agreement might be?
Silence is not acceptance in the law. And in my conversations with counsel for MCWD, they consider the matter settled.
As a follow-up question, is there a reason that there is not some sort of agreed upon settlement in writing?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the question.
The agreement is documented on the letters, within the letters, the letters that we have here.
May I ask a question?
And they're, go ahead.
Just that the first paragraph of the August 10th letter says, thank you for your August 4th letter. This is to MCWD. Thank you for your August 4th letter, accepting FORA's proposed dispute resolution dated July 30th, 2015. So it seems that what that letter is saying, the agreement was in the July 30th letter, but we don't have anything that shows they didn't take action in response to that.
I think you're right. They did not.
So still questioning, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
So there is no MOA or MOU that would be a traditional document that would solidify or codify what was agreed upon. It's simply the exchange of letters.
That's correct.
I have a question. Is there a reason why the one, an MOU and MOA could not be prepared to answer some of the concerns of the board members and public?
There's no legal reason why it could not be prepared if the board directs that.
Board Member Phillips.
I thought that's why we put it over. I thought we put it over so that so there was no confusion by us or Marina Coast, you know, and so I still think we need that, so we know, so everybody knows what we're agreeing to, because I know a lot of us still have the same.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Is a motion then to bring this matter back with a memorandum of understanding between MCWD and FORA?
And I'll second that motion.
And it's been seconded by Board Member Potter. So if this passes and it's not unanimous, then it would come back for a second vote in December to decide whether or not it's coming back in January. If this one fails, we vote on the second meeting. So holidays are upon us. Anyone have any comments about the motion that was just made by Board Member Phillips and seconded by Board Member Potter? Okay, yes, Board Member Prendergast.
I don't say much, but
You don't?
I was quite concerned about what you said, and in regards to, are we, the agreement, does it say that we owe, we will with the, what do you say, the rate increase, the Marina Coast will not use any of that money to pay for litigation costs. So I see on page 61, it does say that, what Steve Inslee just said on the bottom, regards to element number 2, that we will disallow litigation costs incurred to project MCWD rights under the RDP agreement. Correct?
Correct.
That was a big concern for, I think, a lot of us. So they cannot come back. It seems to be loose here. We have no letter, we have no confirmation, we have nothing to present to them, what we do today. And it's, who knows what they'll do on their side.
If the motion passes, I will clear that up and we'll have it right in front of us.
Good, but then I support the motion.
Thank you. Board Member Morton.
I just had a question. So approving the request, the motion for a memorandum of understanding, the memorandum would come back to us for approval as to its content. This is not a done deal because there was a dispute resolution that that memorandum gets signed by the two
Right.
directors. I just want to verify that.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect.
That is the motion in the second, is that correct?
Absolutely. And I would just note, I believe that in the spirit of continuing litigation, Marina Coast has filed a lawsuit contesting the Coastal Commission's decision on the test well. That is not a good indicator of a secession in litigation, which was what we kind of hoped would happen.
Thank you. Oh, seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Any public member have any questions or comments? Of course they do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anthony Lombardo, I support the motion.
Would you please make an actual written note of the length of that? That was a 5-second comment. Greatly appreciated by an attorney. Any other public members?
What the local community needs to know is where is their protection in all of the decisions that are being made. This was a federal process that trumps state processes. And where is the protection for the local community? Where is the concern for the local community in all of this? Even with the water, to use gray water or whatever, how does the community get protected? How do they get their information? When you want to raise the water rates, you want to use recycled water, gray water, whatever you want to do, where is the protection for the community? How do they get to have input into these decisions?
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Maria, do you understand the motion?
Yes.
You're comfortable with it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion made by Board Member Phillips? We did public comment.
Yeah, you did all right.
I assume there's no one here in the board that wants to make further comment. Thank you. Okay. The motion, Board Member Phillips, and second by Board Member Potter. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous. Thank you. For those board members who came in a little bit late, item 8C, we're continuing that to the December meeting at least, but we are going to allow members of the public to make comments relating to this item since it is on the agenda. So if you are a member of the public and you feel the need to or wanting to comment, please do so, but realize that it would be appreciated if you're going to say something that you consider saying it at the next meeting as well, or otherwise just one time. Thank you.
It's going to be difficult. Is this on?
It's on, yeah.
Okay. It'll be difficult to get all these workers back together, so we're going to speak today.
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. So hi, my name is Matthew Miller. I'm a labor compliance investigator for the Northern California Carpenters Regional Council. And Move it up. All right, is that better? I can hear myself. Thank you. Let's start over. My name is Matthew Miller. I'm a labor compliance investigator for the Northern California Carpenters Regional Council. I want to say a few things about the East Garrison project and some of the violations my colleagues and I discovered there. First, I want to say that the certified payrolls for Erickson Framing were clearly show that the workers were not being paid the correct prevailing wage rate, and for this area, for framing in particular. The most basic part of labor compliance is comparing the certified payrolls, the rate that's on the certified payrolls, to the determinations that are released by the Department of Industrial Relations. Okay, the master resolution calls for the general prevailing wage rate for general construction to be used on all first-generation construction projects at FORA. So these CPRs clearly show Erickson Framing paying the residential rate, which is lower. Somehow this went unnoticed for over 8 months of payrolls. Now, our senior agent here noticed them on first glance and called and realized that workers were being underpaid. So that's Erickson Construction. Workers for CVC, doing the form work, were made to report to a yard in Fresno early in the morning. They drive all the way to Marina to get to work. They work 8 hours. They drive all the way back to Fresno to the yard, and they're getting equipment, they're getting company trucks, and that's compensable time because they're under the control of the employer during that time. Now, these workers are all paid 8 hours on the payrolls as well, and that would be overtime for all these workers at the prevailing wage rate. So also, workers for CVC were denied lunch and rest periods on a regular basis, which is contrary to the labor code. So I asked every worker I interviewed the same question: did anyone from labor compliance ever come and talk to you about your wages, about your rights, about anything? And the answer was always no. So you don't have to take it from me. We invited workers from CVC and Erickson Construction to talk about what happened on the project. They're all Spanish speakers, so Emilio Hippolito, who's also with the Northern California Carpenters Regional Council, will be translating. And I appreciate your time. And I should comment, none of these workers have been made whole for any of the things that have happened up to this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mi nombre es Oscar Mendoza
Hello, my name is Oscar Mendoza.
y trabajaba para Ericsson Construction
I'm a worker with Erickson Framing Construction
en el proyecto de East Garrison.
in the project East Garrison.
Durante mi tiempo de trabajo
During this time of work,
era un requisito que tenía que pagar una aseguranza.
I was required to pay for an insurance.
Cuando yo fui al doctor,
When I went to the doctor,
ellos me dijeron que no tenía aseguranza.
they told me that I had no insurance.
Me pagaba $6 por hora
I was paying $6 per hour
para esa aseguranza
for this insurance.
y pagué más de $4,000
I paid more than $4,000 for this insurance
por esa aseguranza y no la pude usar.
that I could never use.
Nadie me habló de labor complaints
Nobody for labor complaints ever came over
y de mi sueldo y mis derechos.
about my about the monetary amounts that I should get or my rights.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes,
Good afternoon.
mi nombre es Rosendo Fraire.
My name is Rosendo Freire.
Yo trabajé para CBC Concrete
I work for CVC Concrete
en el proyecto East Garrison.
and the project is Garrison.
Me dijeron, llega a la yarda a las 4:45 de la mañana.
They used to tell me, get at 4 a.m. to the yard.
Después viajamos al lugar de trabajo. Llegamos, trabajamos 8 horas, no lonche, no descanso, no pago de viaje.
We then traveled to the coast, about a 3-hour ride. We worked for 8 hours. and several times we did not receive lunch or breaks.
No pagan el viaje al proyecto. El viaje es de 6 horas ida y vuelta. Llego a mi casa a las 7 de la tarde.
The travel time from Fresno to here, round trip, it was between 5 and 6 hours.
Porque tenemos que buscar dónde comer en el camino. Paramos por 1 hora, comemos, nos vamos y no recibo pago por el viaje.
This was including about an hour that we stopped for lunch, so that's where the 6 hours came from. We never got paid for the travel time.
Hubiera sido bueno haber recibido ese pago.
It would have been a good thing to have received this payment
para poder contratar a alguien que le ayudara a mi esposa a cuidar a mi hijo deshabilitado.
It would have been good to be paid for this amount, the hours that I travel to help pay, because I have a kid that is in disability.
Yo nunca vi a nadie de cumplimiento laboral en mi lugar de trabajo.
I could never see anybody from labor compliance in the project.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Iván Hernández y trabajé para CBC Concrete.
My name is Iván Hernandez and I work for CBC Concrete.
Básicamente tengo el mismo problema que mis compañeros.
I have the same problem as my partners.
Únicamente que a mí me decían que si quería trabajar tenía que transportar a trabajadores en mi vehículo personal.
In my case, what they told me, they asked me to bring workers in my personal vehicle.
Y yo tenía que manejar alrededor de 6 horas que nunca me pagaron.
I did travel for about 6 hours that they never paid me.
Ese es todo mi problema y tuve un problema más que mi esposa, gracias a ese tiempo que nunca se me pagó.
I had one more problem, and that was thanks to this non-payment of wages, my wife.
Mi esposa tuvo que dejar su empleo porque no había quien transportar a mis hijos a la escuela y se me dificultaba mucho.
She had to quit her job because I couldn't help her anymore taking care of her kids, from taking them from practices and coming back from school.
Agradezco su tiempo
I really thank you for your time.
y doy gracias a los investigadores que nos ayudaron de los carpinteros.
I'd like to thank the investigators from labor compliance from the carpenters for their help.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es José Alcántar.
My name is José Alcántar.
Pues prácticamente es lo mismo porque trabajamos en la misma compañía todos en CBC.
Basically, I have the same complaint as my co-workers because we all work for CDC Construction.
Yo también, como mis compañeros, me levantaba a las 3 de la mañana para arreglar mi lonche.
The same as my co-workers, I used to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to fix my lunch and get ready for the travel.
Y para estar listo a las 4 en la yarda para salir al trabajo.
To be ready at 4 a.m. at the yard to come to work.
Yo a mí en lo personal no nos daban breaks.
In my personal experience, I never received breaks.
A mí entre el pago que era de lo que me tenían que pagar, la diferencia en lo que era el pago real y el pago que me daban son $13.68 por hora.
I was missing out of my pay about $13.68 per hour.
Igual también eran 6 horas de camino que no nos recompensaban con nada. A veces usaba uno el carro, no gas, no viáticos.
And that's not including the travel time that wasn't paid. They never pay us for any travel time. And also, sometimes we had to use our personal vehicles, even coming from the yard.
Yo sé que ustedes pueden decir que tienes que trabajar, pero son 6 horas. Es casi otra jornada de trabajo, que no estoy en mi casa con mis hijos y con mi esposa.
I know that you could say you could choose your work, but this is just like another part-time work of 6 hours that I was not around with my family and my wife.
También nunca vimos a una persona de labor complaints que nos dijera o que fuera y preguntara cuánto ganan, les dan sus breaks o algo así. Nunca vino una persona con nosotros.
Nobody came from labor compliance to ever talk to us and tell us about our wages, our breaks, or even our rights.
Bueno, pues eso es todo y muchas gracias por su tiempo. Y sí me gustaría que nos pusieran atención porque muchas veces las compañías abusan de uno y simplemente dice, si quieres trabajar, ahí está, y si no te puedes ir.
I'd like to thank you for your time. This is all about I have to say, but I would like to emphasize that you guys have the power, because some of these companies, they just come and tell us, okay, whether you take it or leave it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maurice Velarde with the Plumber Steam Fitters. Since I last spoke with you informing you of the egregious acts being committed by contractors, nothing has changed. Contractors continue to cheat on projects. Millions of dollars are being recovered by local 6'2" plumbers and steam fitters for workers on Fort Ord in just 2015 alone. Think about that. Millions of dollars are being, it's not the union's responsibility to enforce the law spelled out in the master resolution. Some of the despicable acts going on range from workers sleeping on projects. For example, at the Cinemark, at Spring Hill Suites right now, there's a fifth wheel parked there. People from Fresno are sleeping in it. They're cheating small business and the overall economy. Their projects are being built illegally, not up to code, putting young lives in danger at the promontory, which, once again, we discovered and are spearheading a potential lawsuit if it's not corrected. That's with the city of Marina currently. Contractors are running amok. There's people across the street right now cheating. When you go out to your vehicles, that project across the street, they're cheating. Anybody that wants specifics can call me. Maurice Velarde, Local 62. I'll give you names, what the acts are, everything. Contractors are running amok, and it's just good business for them. They keep getting away with it. They cheat the community by not hiring apprentices. Jobs in a helping hand can help reduce crime. Employment and jobs cut crime by 50%, according to a WADOC study. People move from committing crimes to contributing to the community, raising their families, and stopping the cycle of crime. It just makes sense that being employed, paying taxes, and not causing trouble makes a positive impact. Your constituents deserve better. They pay the taxes that fund much of the projects, yet they and their small businesses suffer. Another option I'd like for you to consider are project labor agreements. They ensure that local workers will be employed on the projects, that young men and women who can't afford college can acquire a career through the building trades. Veterans are placed in well-paying jobs as we owe them at least that, instead of having workers being cheated at the Veterans Cemetery, as I discovered last week. It doesn't cost any more. It's prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is prevailing wage. A project labor agreement costs no more. Anyone can bid it. Out-of-town contractors, union, non-union, it doesn't matter. Other cities have done it. Salinas is doing it. Santa Cruz is doing it. Watsonville's doing it. We've had it forever at the power plant. It's just common sense. Everyone on this board has worked very hard to get where you're at. You've all worked hard for these positions of leadership. I believe because you really care about the community and the people you serve. Please do the right thing for your constituents and help build this great community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ron Cheshire, Monterey Santa Cruz Building Construction Trades Council. Item 8C is presented to you today is actually in two parts. The first part that's in your packet had to do with CCMI, because at the last meeting I asked for an investigation, which I thought would be more than just checking out whether the DIR approved them and whether they had client satisfaction, as to what was going on out at East Garrison and the violations that were taking place. Now, the second part of the report that was issued to you, we tend to agree and support the staff recommendation at this time, but we understand that there's some things that need to be looked into, and we actually have some concerns in regards to whether appropriate procedures need to be implemented and instituted within the language of a resolution or so, how payment's going to be made and such. So again, we would really like to see some enforcement out here, because the county and the city of Marina have ignored their responsibilities and are on the road to legal action if they don't straighten up. And if they don't do it, then it's up to FORA to bring them into compliance themselves. You know, what really hurts the most is having to sit here and listen to you guys argue about trees for hours upon hours and watch you manipulate, maneuver, and play your politics against two communities that really could use some economic development and such. And you just sort of keep, you just sort of keep them down, keep them barefoot and pregnant, I guess, huh? It's really disgusting. I don't know. I never did agree with this regional concept. I'm sure if they closed the Navy Postgraduate School or the DLI, there wouldn't be any regional boards, okay? I know what would take place. I know the politics of this area. I lived here 60 years. It stinks. Do something for the people of the community. It was stated earlier. Do something for the workers here. Let's get it taken care of. And in that, in regards to the first issue on item 8C, there was a recommendation to choose compliance monitors through an RFP process. So maybe you ought to just consider taking that first item off the agenda altogether. So again, I'm up here one more time, fighting for the workers and the people of this community, not the trees.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. Time's up.
And the New York Yankees, of
Thank you.
course.
Every single
Against those
person was
Boston Red Sox fan.
every single person was less than 3 minutes except one. So, anyone else?
Hello? I am appalled. As a commissioner in this county, I'm finding out piece by piece why the local people don't have jobs. And to bring people all the way from Fresno to do the work which is called cheap labor, and leave the local people without anything is appalling. Our organization brought in the EPA to train people to work on Fort Ord, to train them so that they could have decent jobs to take care of their families. And they would have put more money into this community if all the parties that were involved had kept their words about hiring them. It's time, folks. I don't know who's responsible, and I don't care. What is important is that we get it right. That we get it right. And I want a report. I want a report about what is going on, about the projects that are going up, and the workers, the people from the community that are involved. I don't care what project it is. I don't care if it's university or what. That's the report I want. And since I'm not allowed to sit on the FORA board or any of your committees, that's what I want. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on this matter. Again, this will be coming back. It was just for the purpose of public comment today of the people who attended. And to those of you who took the time, thank you very, very much. We will now go to item 8D, which is Monterey Bay Charter School Traffic Impact Agreement. Michael, and I think Jonathan will be making a presentation as well.
Yes, Chair, this item is fairly straightforward. This is an agreement that we are entering into with Monterey Bay Charter School. This would allow for specific provisions for how Monterey Bay Charter School would pay its special CFD taxes, and that would take into account all of the requirements under the May 11th, 2007 California Supreme Court issued writ. It would cover all of those items. Their specific FORA listing impacts are noted here. The main points were negotiated between MBCS and FORA, but it's fairly straightforward. Like all other projects on FORA, they are paying their prevailing wage. No, sorry. They're paying their community facilities district fees, and as a consequence, all of the mitigation measures for traffic are accomplished through that fee.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Jonathan, do you have input? Thank you.
I would just say the executive officer described accurately that there was a settlement with the Supreme Court with FORA and CSUMB, and this would be on CSUMB campus, but because they're paying the CFD fee, would not count towards, traffic would not count towards those thresholds identified in the settlement.
Thank you. Any questions by any board members of this matter? Board Member Potter.
So, in order to provide for transportation impacts, other than hardcore construction projects, CSUMB agreed to sort of a transportation demand program. This is CSUMB property. Does the charter school, will they be abiding by the same trip reduction formula that CSUMB was using, where students were issued bus passes, there was vehicle control, pedestrian encouragement, bicycle ped opportunities? That's what we went and testified. I think, Ralph, you were with me when we went down to the Regents and testified to say we thought this was a viable alternative to hardcore construction projects. This is a CFD contribution, which is fine, but in the world of transportation demand trip reduction, are they going to follow the same agreement that CSUMB had, since it's CSUMB land?
This is a slightly different picture, Supervisor. So in this particular case, the writ governs California State University, Monterey Bay, operating its educational mission. And so there's a specific annual report that they have to provide. They do trip generation counts, and those are all covered in this writ. This is a use that was not included as part of CSU Monterey Bay. Whether or not they're complying with all of those items, I think Jonathan will have to answer. But because they're paying their fee, which is what we require of all projects on the former Fort Ord to pay for its share of the CEQA mitigations, that takes care of this project and does not count against the CSUMB.
What does it do for its transportation impacts? That's my question, is unless these people aren't driving back and forth to school, how are we addressing the transportation impacts that CSUMB was good enough to go and do? And we worked out collaboratively. I know it was a few years ago, but it does seem to me that there is probably a transportation impact associated with this. And of course, this will be perceived as my being against the project, which I'm not. I'm just raising the transportational side of this and saying, what is the impact?
So for the charter school, they have not done an environmental document yet, so we do not know the traffic impacts of building the school. What we do with the FORA CFD is a portion of the fee goes towards transportation roads that's in our capital improvement program. Mm-hmm. So just like an office on the dunes would pay the same fee rate, or Chartworth School, for example, in Seaside pays the same fee rate. That fee goes into the FORA CIP revenue system and comes out in building the roads on Fort Ord. So we put them in the same boat.
I don't have a problem with the CFD portion of it, but as they go through their environmental impact report for the development of the school and the transportation issues and impacts are addressed, I think it would be well if they go ahead and follow the CSUMB model for trip reduction, and that we can address at that time.
Chair, through the chair, as Supervisor, I think Erin Harwain could answer this question more directly because she's been intimately involved.
You asked for it.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
I'm Erin Harway, and I'm with Denise Duffy and Associates. We are contracted by the charter school. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm Erin Harway with Denise Duffy and Associates. Is that too loud now? Okay. We're contracted by the charter school to provide the entitlements and the CEQA compliance for the project. We've been coordinating closely with CSUMB and their planning department. And I just actually received a text this afternoon that the traffic report is ready. So we are going through our due diligence for the traffic study, and the previous draft did include fee calculations for localized impacts not included in the FORA CIP, so they will have a fair share calculation associated with those improvements and pay towards those. In addition, they have a long history. The charter school has a long history of, I think, about 60% carpool. They don't have a bus system. It's a nonprofit county chartered school. So they do have a strong carpool program and bike and pedestrian, and we've been working with MST to relocate a bus stop closer to the campus. So there are a lot of things that we're looking into, but we're not quite ready to give it all away yet. We're working on that.
Okay, great. That's the answer I was looking for. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by board members? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Any member of the public have any questions or comments relating to this item? Seeing none, we'll close. It's been moved by Board Member Potter and seconded by Board Member Rubio. And by the way, before we vote on this, on page 67 of this, the memorandum of understanding, if you're curious and you haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, under background number 2, if you go on the internet and type in the stipulation and all that sentence through the date of September 9, 2009, the entire document will be brought up for you to read. It's excellent reading if you want to read a legal document. Anyhow, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll now go to public comment. Anyone in the public desiring to make comments on any matter that is not on the agenda, you have up to 3 minutes.
Tom Mancini, I'm a member of the Veterans Transition Center Advisory Board. I take offense to Ms. Stone's comments that we don't do enough for our veterans. Since 1998, the Veterans Transition Center has acquired over 40 single-family dwellings. And last week, the Monterey Bay Housing Authority, commonly referred to as Clark Realty, wasn't getting enough occupancy of their military homes in Marshall Park and made a deal with the Veterans Transition Center to lease 6 3-bedrooms to the Veterans Transition Center. This is not transitional housing. This will be permanent housing for members of the veterans and or families who are going to get out of transitional housing. This housing will be rented to them. The City of Seaside provided Veterans Transition Center with $35,000 to rehabilitate those 6 homes, the 18 rooms. In addition to that, the Veterans Transition Center received a $5 million grant about a year ago to build 70 more dwelling units somewhere around this particular area. So don't say that our veterans aren't getting taken care of. Our Veterans Transition Center works very, very hard to provide for the homeless. In addition to that, the Veterans Transition Center, in conjunction with the Monterey County Veterans Service Office, conducts a stand down every 2 years, and it's done over here on 8th Street. She feels offended because I'm upset with her, and fine, don't knock the veterans. We are doing everything we possibly can to provide shelter to the veterans. Now, however, if you'd like to send your veterans to Virginia, the state of Virginia has just adopted a program where there will be no homeless veterans in that state. It was an article in the Army Times, the Marine Times, the Navy Times. There's 2 or 3 states that have been able to address homeless veterans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since my name was called, I'm the wife of a veteran. And what I'm talking about is the fact that there is not enough housing for veterans. They're on the streets, and especially the communities of color, the African American veterans, and all the other veterans that I know, and they talk to us, and they've been talking to us since the closure of Fort Ord. So if somebody is taking offense to what I'm saying, if they get out there and get their figures right and find out what is happening in the community, they would not have to get upset with me or anybody else in the community.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we will go to the executive officer's report relating to informational items 10A through H. I believe they're all informational.
I have nothing to add, Chair.
Wow, okay. Any items from members? Seeing one?
I wanted to thank whoever set up the tables and the name tags this way. I was a Girl Scout. We have this saying, make new friends to keep the old. I'm very happy to be next to my new friends here and to hopefully keep the old over there. And I would encourage us to keep it loose like we have. And it was an interesting and vibrant discussion today, perhaps because of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, to all of you, have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family, and we'll see you in December. Thank you.